everyone for being here again. Just wanted to bring us all back to where we are. So Corey Murphy is over there on your far left with Nico Inzer and then Alan Wolf. They all represent Park Hill. So we made a presentation to the board right before Thanksgiving regarding what this committee recommended. I then presented that, so if you want to check out what I told the board, please just go to our website. Valerie does a good job of posting everything. There's a little link. You got to look at the little bottom. Valerie, you want to explain where to find this stuff?
The main board of trustees page, there's a meetings link.
You can go and pick out whatever you want to listen to. They're very short. This presentation from your last meeting lasted about 5 minutes, I want to say. So it's a pretty quick study for you to kind of know. We'll do the same thing again after this meeting because you posted this meeting last time.
Yes.
And we'll post this meeting again shortly, probably tomorrow. She has to go through and edit all of the things. We have to have it handicap accessible for everyone who's visually and auditorily handicapped, so you can imagine how difficult that is to make sure that all those things are taken care of. So we made a presentation with a west front to the high school, and now that that is out of the way, the costs for that were about $52 million. So before we go too crazy and we get ourselves down the road, before we get too far down the road into too big of a discussion, you can just hand a group and just let them pass them down. Yep. There's 50 of them in there, and there's not 50 of you here, so I'm pretty confident that there's enough to go around everybody. So I'll wait for everybody to get a handout, and then I'll just take you through some preliminary things to just discuss.
Tell them how good at counting is bad, right?
You're doing a fine job. Let's try hard to get fired.
We need some more on this circle.
They need some behind you, Alan.
Right here. One more right here.
No.
So my goal in handing this out to you is not to direct your discussion tonight. My goal is to provide you with factual information to keep us from going down rabbit holes. So, first thing, the plan we developed at our last meeting will cost $52 million and some change based upon our current understanding of the cost structure. Okay, so we all saw what that was. Our second priority was Hutchins. They will present that to you this evening. The cost to renovate Hutchins is going to be done by continuing to keep the third grade hallway, which is at the very north end of the school, and then construct 2 more grade levels. Those haven't been determined, but we can only construct 2 of them. That will leave us somewhere between $6 to $8 million remaining in our bond funds, depending on whether we're able to generate $81 million or $83 million. So in my mind, 52 and 23 is 75, and 75 away from 81 leaves 6, and 75 away from 83 leaves 8. That's where I'm coming up with the numbers. I'm good. I can do math. So let's talk about that second set of things. Number one, when we talk about what we're going to do with the elementaries, we need to remember our configuration and our consolidation thoughts. Lots of comments were generated during that time. I've tried to consolidate it into the following 4 points. Number one, the maximum school size typically is looked at to be 900 students. Well, no matter matter how you slice it, dice it, cut it, if you look down there at the very bottom, it only leaves an option to do a 3 grade level configuration. Because 240 times 4 is more than 900. It's 960. So right off the bat, I'm just telling you that if the board and this committee makes the recommendation to the board to keep the grade levels or the campuses less than 900, there is no way you can put more than 3 grade levels in a building. Yes, Cheryl.
And this doesn't include early childhood or pre-K.
Don't worry about early childhood and pre-K.
You have to put them somewhere.
Well, so I put them on here, it's gonna be another 200 kids added to whatever, wherever you put early childhood and pre-K. So all I'm trying to do is get you all to consolidate. I'm not trying, as again, we can put early childhood and pre-K at K, and then you can only go K and 1. Or you can put early childhood and pre-K and K and 1. What are you going to do then? Are you going to have 2, 3, 4, 5? What does that do? Now we're over 900. That's 4 grade levels. Can't do that. That's what I'm trying to get this group to look at, so you don't go down rabbit holes about trying to determine where we can best figure. And look, I've given you a 10-year average and a 5-year average. I've got all the years and all the grade levels. I could have done this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I just took the work out of it for you. So you didn't go down rabbit holes. Early childhood and pre-K are about 200 students. About 150 of them in pre-K and about 50 of them in early childhood. But that is what we have right now, and we're pretty much limited, are we not, Ms. Starry, based upon facts and parameters, but those could change if you change the model for early childhood and pre-K. That's why I've kind of kept them separate. Plus early childhood and pre-K, what do they need in their classrooms that they don't have now? Restrooms. So that totally changes things. So that's why I've just kept them off the list right now. Not trying to keep you from thinking we're getting rid of early childhood and pre-K. I'm trying to get you to see that we can only have 3 grade levels no matter how we slice this or dice this. And then the other thing is if we have grade levels of 3, now we have 3 equitably sized campuses. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whether it's K1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they're all about the same size campuses, and therefore they can be staffed equitably. Because right now, it doesn't matter how we do it, we don't have a really good way to give a model of staffing that makes sense to everybody. Because at Northside, we have 1 principal and 1 assistant principal and 1 counselor. But at Hutchins, we have 2 assistant principals, a principal, and 2 counselors. And at the middle school, we have 3 counselors, 3 assistant principals, and 1 principal. So this, if we do something grade level equitable split, then it allows us to make a little bit easier judgment on how we staff that with people. I want everyone in this room to understand, no matter what we do with students, we will always need the same number of teachers. You can't, that doesn't change. Class sizes are pretty much already set in stone. So I gave you those 2. It tells you right there on number 4, it leaves early child and pre-K outstanding. As potential, you'll see in just a minute after these guys take you through their look. Remember, we have $6 to $8 million out there that is not accounted for yet. Yes, sir.
But what does an $80 million-ish bond cost to issue and like the other stuff? Because there's the fees and there. I mean, it's a couple $1 million, isn't it?
Now this everything as I understand it, except for site construction. So we're reworking the parking lot and the entry at Hutchins, reworking the parking lot and the entry at Northside. These numbers all contain soft costs.
Including bond issue.
Include cost of issues.
Okay.
Yeah, this is tax title license and drive out. It does not include site construction.
Do they include contingency and FF&E and all of these things?
It includes FF&E and includes contingencies. So what we thought you asked us to do was come back with, these are the numbers to be all inclusive, so there isn't, so the reason we're at 6 to 8 million left over is that everything else is accounted for in the 75. Questions before I throw it over to them? Okay. You're up.
Okay.
Thank.
And you want to thank Mr. Maka for his.
Yes. And if anybody misbehaves, I've got a high-powered laser now. So say goodbye to your eyeballs. Okay. So, this is our agenda for tonight. Mr. Callahan got into it pretty well early on. But at the end of the day, we want to really hammer out the elementary. Last time, we made a lot of headway on the high school. Everybody felt like we were in good shape. We reached a consensus in our opinion. That one's good. So this meeting, we're dedicating to the elementaries. Now, unfortunately, for this situation, and maybe fortunately for the meeting length and for our efforts, this is basically shaping up to be a report out, not so much a discussion. As Mr. Callahan said, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but unfortunately this cat of elementary schools, it's kind of not too many other ways to do it than what we're going to go through tonight. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to recap the high school just to make sure everybody's still got warm and fuzzies. We're going to talk about the budget, and then we'll figure out our next meeting. And housekeeping committee charge. While you're here, we're working toward a long-range facility master plan for the district and a recommendation to the board.
When we get to this slide at the end, we're gonna talk about what our next meeting looks like together, because I feel like we need another meeting to talk about what that looks like with the board. But I think hopefully we're gonna be getting close tonight with what we talk about to having a direction.
This is where we've been, this is where we're going tonight, elementary options and budget. And then the next meeting most likely won't be in December, it will shift down to January, but meeting 6 and 7, we think we can accomplish in the next meeting, and that would be the end of it for you guys in this committee.
It's just
for
the
this
beginning,
effort.
we gotta pass
Well,
it.
just for this effort, as far as getting a recommendation to the board, we'll discuss, you know, having a spokesperson and what that recommendation to the board looks like in a format and all that sort of stuff. So if you remember back, I think it was the second meeting, we did a survey and said, which options do you prefer? And it was option 1 overwhelmingly said, we want 2 campuses for pre-K to 5 or early childhood pre-K to 5. And not a early childhood first and a second through 5 because of that big number that Mr. Callahan talked about. That 900 is the magic number. We're getting pretty close to it there. Now, this is a perfect world, but unfortunately we can't do all that right now with the remaining funds, the 6 to 8 million as Mr. Callahan mentioned. We can accomplish this now. So, go to the next slide. It's looking more like this. And I know this is not what you guys wanted, but without raising taxes, this isn't possible. Or, I'm sorry, this isn't possible right now. So it's gonna have to be a 3-campus configuration like we've got currently, but there will be some shuffling around. Mine will potentially serve as an elementary or early childhood and pre-K. Northside would be a K1 to 2, and then Hutchins would be converted to a 3, 4, 5. Now it's important to note, you know, Hutchins, there was a lot of discussion and favoritism toward Hutchins being a different grade level, and let's add pre-K, K1 and 2 there, but the core spaces at Hutchins can't support that additional enrollment. It's just too much for that cafeteria, for that kitchen, and for that site, frankly. So this is the configuration that we've further developed. So this is what it's looking like. This is our space program. These are all the individual spaces that would be within the new construction here. Third grade, the kitchen and the cafeteria would stay. That's going to be the $34,251. That's the existing to remain. The new addition would be the $43,356, and it would add a fourth and fifth grade wing to Hutchins. Third grade would stay where it is. All of the original construction, existing library, admin, all the classrooms that serve first and second now, those all go away. So we'll go to the next, and this comes at a price of $22.9, just under $23 million. So all this goes away. The existing third grade wing and the existing kitchen cafeteria stay. The gym may be something to discuss. It's in decent shape, but it's a pretty good height from the rest of, or what would be the new addition there. So this is going to be your third grade wing here. This is going to be your kitchen cafeteria, new gym, admin entry, fourth grade wing, fifth grade wing, library and support core spaces. So how does that look just from the surface right now? Does that give anybody heartburn?
Yes. Yes.
Costs? Okay. Do we want to talk about it?
No.
You don't want to talk about it?
No, because if y'all are gonna listen anyway, so.
Well, I mean, that's what we're here for. There's not much else we can do at this campus.
So what we're after here is to try to see, you know, ideally you'd like to do everything you want all at one time in one bond. What we're trying to work towards is what can we do now towards the end of what y'all said in meeting 2 about right-sizing the campuses and leave ourselves room. We're not tearing down or undoing something the next time we do one. So
This would essentially result in a brand new elementary school with a 10-year-old wing, but then everything else would be new. The lion's share of this new campus would all be new construction.
My suggestion, and this is just a suggestion, y'all can disagree with me if you want, but my suggestion is just leave Maya EC through kindergarten, like it is now, and just redo Hutchins and leave it the same grades, and leave Northside and leave them the same grades, like, just for now, until we can get more money to make things right.
That's essentially what we're doing, but
But
moving
moving
Northside to Hutchins.
Yeah.
Why? What was the, I might have missed it, you might have said it, but why is it that you feel that it's best to move fourth and fifth grade to Hutchins and first and second to?
Mainly due to geographic proximity. Right now, you guys have 3 campuses. You go from the Myatt north side, and then you go to Hutchins, and then you come back. So there could be shared resources between those 2 campuses if their grade levels were more aligned in succession. So pre-K,
Such as?
early childhood pre-K to 2, instead of,
Okay.
they would all be in the Myatt north side campus. Instead of going here to there to here.
In the future.
They're here.
your Next step.
The next step,
Right,
correct.
that's what, yeah.
And so,
When we can expand,
correct.
it would be a continuum
Probably
Correct.
long-term.
from the
Yeah, if-
middles
if-
to the,
If Hutchins
The
stayed
bigger
as
ones.
it is right now, then your problem at the Myatt north side of it, you're gonna have to reconfigure because you're not gonna build an early childhood pre-K, K 3, 4, 5, and then, or 4, 5, and then leave, you know, then you're gonna have a gap in your grade levels and there's no continuation.
So what is the long-term big picture for Myatt and Northside?
We're gonna get into that.
Okay.
yeah, no, I think you're going where we're wanting to go now, so. Yeah,
Well,
it's,
before you go there, I do think everybody, just take a minute while you're sitting there to think. If we leave everything as the same, and we build Hutchins as 1, 2, 3. We're always going to have a split between pre-KK and 4, 5.
When I talk to parents in the community, they like that it's split like that. I mean, I've talked to several parents and they like.
I have no doubt, look, this is all of you to discuss and talk about, to give me recommendations that I take back to the board. I just need to share with you that with 5 campuses, split the way they are, when we go, if we choose, remember, everybody said within the next 10 to so years, we have to look at another bond to take care of that pre-K through 4, 5. We're gonna be talking about 2 huge splits in student populations and what they need. Your early childhood is gonna be a whole lot different than your 4, 5. So somewhere down the road, go ahead.
So,
I'm just thinking, it wouldn't matter because if Hutchins is gonna be 3 grade levels, it's still 3 grade levels.
yeah, and so this is really what it boiled down to. The original idea, and granted, these don't have identifiers for what campus it is, but the overwhelming consensus during this polling was 2 campuses, a pre-K to 2 and a 3, 4, 5. So, like I said, we couldn't convert Hutchins to a pre-K to 2 because the core spaces can't support it. So we'd have to expand a cafeteria and a kitchen to do that, and that kitchen and cafeteria is only 10 years old. And it could support a different configuration, so.
Ultimately, it saves us money going with this configuration because we don't have to completely redo what's at Hutchins that's good to leave.
Correct. And so either a lot of people change their mind, or, I don't know.
No, because when we did this, we said that we liked that, but we wanted it to be flipped, that Hutchins would stay the younger ones, and then 3rd, 4th, and 5th would stay at Northside. That's what we said that day when we voted on this, that we liked the 2 campuses, pre-K2 and 3, 5. We just thought that it needed to be flipped, because y'all had presented it this way, and we said that we wanted it to keep the grade levels the way they are now.
So then that's
on that campus.
probably the same way that I think that.
The core spaces won't support it. It's gonna be a lot more
It would
expensive to
be,
do that.
it's not economical.
Well, and I understand it, and that's what I was getting at when I asked, what is the purpose? Why did you make that decision? What was the, and so, like I said, I might have missed it when you said it the first time, if you said it the first time. But that's why I asked that question, because if I know why, then I understand it and I can get past it. It's just, it's just that, and this is just me, this is the old lady in me. I don't like change, and Hutchins has always been, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, or some form of that. So it's just.
Can you expand a little bit more on how you said that the Myatt and Northside campuses, if they were pre-K through 3rd, between those 2 campuses, how they would share resources? Like, do you mean like maybe you would combine 2 classes, like a class would go from Myatt to Northside to have PE or something, or?
I think we're probably talking more of a support staff.
Yeah, it's more of a support staff than a function of the space. And so,
We're not talking about sending teachers across the street.
but, and this is in the long term. So when Myatt and Northside are consolidated into one future elementary that serves early childhood to 2, they could have more shared resources than if you had the current grade split that you have now with early childhood and then 4, 5.
I mean, you could essentially send a teacher across the street.
You would have that option to do that because they're gonna be closer alignment with those grade levels because there's not a gap in the middle.
Would it be possible just to leave Myatt pre-K through kindergarten and then do Northside 1st, 2nd, 3rd? And then do Hutchins 4th and 5th?
First, second, third, fourth, fifth.
Re-say that, I'm sorry.
What you saying?
Would it be possible just to put 1st, 2nd, 3rd at Northside? leave mine the way it is, put first, second, third at Northside, and do fourth and fifth at Hutchins? No.
Well, we'll get into that scenario because what it boils down to is the improvements would either have to happen at Hutchins or at Northside. And Hutchins, the original construction, you couldn't do that at Hutchins because the original construction would have to be improved. And then you're still gonna have to do improvements at Northside. So now you're potentially spending $18 million at Hutchins and then probably $30 million or more at either Northside or at Northside to accomplish that.
I think the other thing is then you'd end up with 2 grade levels so you'd end up operating like 500 students at.
Yeah.
Hang on, James, one real quick, and then we'll go here and then
Okay,
James.
so mine's a very simple question. So based on what Marjorie was saying, is it bothering you that the lower grades are just typically at Hutchins Elementary? Can you rename the schools?
Well, and I will say this. We've done
It's just that.
Something new, but just the north side building that would house those younger children be Hutchins, and then the other Hutchins building.
So it is a challenge and it's hard to kind of wrap your head around. I know because it's been this way for a long time.
Let's go to James real quick before you change.
I think what I would like to hear from y'all is that y'all went into this exercise trying to get, how do we impact the most kids, not go over the 900, which puts, if you're thinking about that, that puts 3 grade levels at each campus. And get the most bang for the buck, because we have to spend $81 or $83 million somehow. Like, we can't leave money on the table here, because if you leave money, you're losing money. Like, you can't go back out next year and get 23 million. You're talking, so you went into this exercise with that in mind.
Yes.
And then the next step that you took was, okay, in 10 years, if El Campo ISD does everything right, and they're able to go get another bond, I can almost tell you, just because I've been in some meetings, it ain't probably gonna be $82 billion again. What do we build next? And
Okay.
that next step would probably be
Yes.
the early childhood pre-K and the 4 and 5. If you had that, if we could.
Did that one.
So if, knowing that, to me, that makes sense, because it starts with, here's the money we have to spend, how do we impact the most kids with a plan that we can act on after we get all this built. You haven't left the school district with a huge problem of, okay, now what do we do? And the next step would be clear, is it's Northside and Maya.
Yep, and that's what this plan would be. So this would be potentially adding a grade level, 2nd grade to Northside, this being kinder, 1st, and 2nd. This 2nd grade would be the first puzzle piece to a future expansion that would replace Northside and Maya. So that next step that you're talking about would be this green block. And so this money could be spent now to accomplish that, and would be the first piece of the future to accommodate that original meeting 2 grade level configuration that everybody wanted at that point in time. And that would be the pre-K to 2 and a 3, 4, 5 campus.
That's within this bond?
So that blue box is the
The
6.
blue box is within
The
the.
blue box, this would be the next step.
So you can do the blue box with 8 million? You can do that with 8 million?
Yes, this and an admin front entry to relocate some of these students out there. To have a new secure entry, improve the admin suite a little bit, and then get all the kids for kinder.
That would pull the blue entryway right there that you're talking about, that would pull the existing admin offices that are kind of,
Yeah, right.
like,
This-
just kind of haphazardly around that area.
Yeah, you walk in and you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
So that blue area on that is basically what would be spent the remaining money, the 6 to 8.
Yes.
Correct?
If you go back a slide. So this is that here. So this is the additional enrollment. Now, the good thing is Northside has a kitchen and a cafeteria that are enormous. And they can support these additional students from what the total enrollment is now to what it would be. square footage per student ratio. But this would be 11 new classrooms, plus a new admin suite with grossing factors, some site work, things like that, for $7.7 million.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's probably not the popular thing to do, but it's the most logical thing to do, I think.
We wholeheartedly agree with that statement.
I'm not a teacher, I don't have any skin in the game, it makes more sense.
Yeah, from a functional standpoint and from an economical standpoint, as far as like function 51 and things like that, this configuration would be the best financial position for the district to operate more efficiently now, and then position themselves for another bond to replace Northside and Maya, leaving that second grade wing as the first piece.
Plus, it would reduce the number at Myatt right now, who's already stretching. And heaven forbid enrollment went up, Myatt can't take that.
Yeah, so Maya currently serves 4 or 5, and they're,
No, Maya serves
No,
early
I'm
childhood.
sorry.
Yeah, non-sec.
Early childhood,
Yeah.
pre-K and K.
yeah, I'm sorry.
So it would reduce the numbers over there until that building is gone.
Correct.
And Northside is a better, you said before, Northside is a better built school than,
They're, as far as structurally, foundationally, both of them have good bones. They're not falling apart, they don't have the major hiccups like Hutchins does. However, Northside functionally is much better suited because the admin is at the front. You don't have to have the honor system when you come in as a visitor. Where at Maya, the admin, you have to go through the whole cafeteria to get to the office. And that's a little problematic, you know, for the littles, if early childhood pre-K being at Maya, you know, you can
well, you just reduce, you know.
move them
reduce
over,
the
you
number.
can, yeah, you can help that functionality of that building a lot easier than you can at Northside.
Second grade building, standalone building.
It would be a standalone. It could be attached if you want to, but it does create some challenges from building code and fire separation. So there would be a physical connection to the building. It wouldn't just be out there. There, you know, there could be a gate and a fence here that's gonna secure that little courtyard.
Or we could do it in closed corridor.
Yeah.
Across there. I think what you're asking is why is it not connected to the building?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the reason there is for a fire code, it'd be easier if we left separation. Not to say we can't do it, we just would have to improve that exterior wall.
So when the future expansion is added, is it still gonna be a standalone, or are you gonna have it?
No, at that point in time, it would be physically connected.
And then eventually that old building would be gone.
Correct.
Basically doing what you're doing to Hutchins now.
Right.
Yes.
So ultimately, the goal is to have a EC through 2 campus of 850 to 875 kids with our littlest kids, the biggest campus, our littlest kids.
Not necessarily. That's why, because if you'll notice, I've always left the early childhood and pre-K. So now I want to throw out one of the things that's been floating out there is that could be your standalone campus with 200 kids. And then your K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are all similar campuses of about the same size. But that way your early childhood, pre-K, could be built to handle early childhood pre-K, and it would be more standalone. Versus adding that into your.
And it may be that the next bond discussion and the next improvement is that this future expansion is just a K1. And another new construction project would be a new early childhood pre-K.
Yeah, and so I guess that would be if part of what we have to decide or what we need to think about is what do we want it to be long-term? What does the master plan look like? If the desired end state would be to have a separate standalone early childhood and pre-K center, and a lot of districts have that. And then you have all your other schools are 3 grade levels each. If that's our our desired state. And that's something we can take as a group and take to the board and say, this is where we want to go, but it's just gonna take 2 steps to get there. So what can we do in step 1 that we're not gonna have to back up for?
Well, one of the things was, going from 3 to 2 to save on money and cost and AC and electricity and all those things, so that's something to consider too. I mean, what would be the best thing to do long-term with that?
In terms of whether you should put it
Saving
all,
money.
whether it makes sense to put it all as an 875 campus or keep it. I think part of the energy efficiency and things like that is in a modern building envelope, having a building structure. The other part is what makes the most sense, I think, as Bob was saying, how you want to staff it. If it works very equitably, how you want to look at staffing your building. 3 grade levels is really kind of the sweet spot of how your campuses function. Maybe it does make sense. And like I said, a lot of districts have the pre-K and early childhood as a separate facility.
That question becomes a fundamental discussion and a decision at the board level. So, the question of, we're gonna put our littlest kids in our biggest campus. I mean, as far as primary campuses go. Lots of districts do it. We're working on dozens of them right now. If y'all don't wanna do that, and y'all say that's a non-starter, then the next step would be this green box becomes a K1, and you've already got your 2 there, and it's also an early childhood pre-K. Or it's this green box becomes all of it. But neither of those can be accomplished with the funds available now.
That would be a discussion for 10 years down the road.
Correct.
The next one.
Not tonight.
Correct.
Northside have restrooms in the classes.
No.
Do you have?
Is there any more? You don't look happy. You want to talk about it?
So,
Well, let me ask this question of everyone in the group, because it seems like we're at a standstill. So I'm just gonna ask a simple question of, is it starting to get to the point where the committee wants us to move forward to go to the board and say, add the high school, spend $52 million and stop?
No.
Well, wait a minute, folks. That's where we are in our, I'm listening to everything everybody's saying.
Not at all.
Well, but I need everybody to understand that from my perspective, listening as the outsider, because I didn't grow up here, I didn't go to school here, but it's my job to make the community get what they want out of the schools. So, go ahead.
Isn't there financial implications with us only taking $52 million?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's, before you ask that question, I think you need to make sure everyone understands that.
Well, that's where I was about ready to go, because if we spend 52 and then we stop, then we leave everything else right as it is right now. Next year, we will have Myatt, or 3 years from now, we'll have Myatt serving early childhood, pre-K, and K. We will have Hutchins serving 1, 2, and 3, and we will have Northside serving 4 and 5. The high school and the middle school will be the same, and the high school will have $52 million and will be a new facility. But the other, from 52 to 81 to 83 is now off the table. I just need everybody to understand that we have one chance at doing this, because if we only spend 52, let me just be clear, El Campo ISD's tax rate will plummet. It will never rise until you come back to the community and say, we need to raise taxes, so let's just look at what we've got up there. We're looking at $35 million approximately. We are spending 29 cents to get to 81. So if we cut that by 3/8, our tax rate will drop down to about, I don't know, 18 cents, Demetri? Is that about right? Maybe not. So our tax rate will go to 18. To be able to come back and get that money down the road is we're gonna have to go to the taxpayers and ask for them for a 12 to 15 cent increase in taxes. Well, exactly. After you just, so I'm not trying to, I just need everybody to understand.
I think it's important to know that everybody agrees that the older portions of Hutchins need to be moved.
Yes.
It's not gonna get less expensive, and there is capacity to replace it right now. So we need to replace that construction. I mean, I think we've said that before, right? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think, maybe I'm not hearing the same thing. I don't think it's a matter of not spending the money. It's just that there's a struggle with the reconfiguring the grades and understanding the reasoning behind it, because y'all are much more experienced in this, and it's processing. It's like you found out you have to move classrooms at the last minute, and there's a little bit of grief in there, and then it's that processing. Like I don't feel there's a question not to spend the full amount. It's just working through the acceptance.
Sure.
As what grades.
Real quick, I want to ask this question. So if you had a separate early childhood center in the in-state, if we had early childhood and pre-K, let's say it was its own separate building, would this make more sense to you all? Would that take some of the concern away if you had, now we would be talking
Because
about 3
what it
grade
boils
levels
down
here
to-
and 3 grade levels at Hutchins?
If Hutchins
Right.
remains as it's currently configured as a 1, 2, 3, and we replace the original construction, and we build a new 2-grade wing like we're talking about, but it's just a 1, 2, 3, then we know Myatt and Northside have to be dealt with eventually.
Right.
So then we're gonna end up with a early childhood to K and a 4-5. So now you've got 2 new campuses, one serving only 2 grade levels and one serving your levels. If that's the direction you want to go, we could absolutely do that. But you're not getting the benefit of the economy of having a consolidation, and you're not solving any other problems other than this is what you're familiar with. And so we can do that if that's the direction you want to go, but it's not checking as many boxes.
I think it's just, this committee has been, I think we've worked, the exception of one meeting, that was a complete headache.
We try to do so much.
I think this committee's done a pretty darn good job of taking steps and strides, and my thought is that there's been some things in this process that, I'm talking about my experiences, that I didn't completely agree with. Like, I don't particularly like which way the school's facing or something like that, where I like the other one a little bit better, but I'm okay with the outcome of it, because it will work. But the one thing that I think is important here is to keep our eye on the ball and say, okay, we're gonna have $81 million or $83 million of money to spend for our kids. We have to figure out a way to spend it that makes sense and will take us into the future and can the best way to spend it. And I gotta be honest, it doesn't really matter to me which grade levels, which 3 grade levels, or which school and what name's on the school. What matters to me is we spend the money in a smart way. And I think that these guys have gone back to the office and brought us and said, this is the smartest way to spend the money. And I've got some trust in that. And I think what they're saying makes sense, that you get economies of scale, you get the benefit of consolidation down the road. It gives us a plan going forward. I think that at some point, this committee's gotta take a leap of faith and do a straw poll and say, hey, are we on board? And let the board because we're not the end-all decision maker. All this goes back to the board. And let the board say, okay, this is what the committee said, they can agree or not agree. And they can rearrange stuff. But I think as a committee person, what I'm ready to do is say, okay, do we want to move forward and say, okay, we want to spend $81 million in the best, smartest way, and we're cool with this plan going forward, and if the board wants to tweak it, let them do it. That's why they make all the big money.
And I agree, because like what she said, I think because after hearing more information and getting the why, I understand that, and I'm on board with it now, because it's, like she said, it's just that initial, oh no, it's always been this way, and we can't change that. But once you tell me this is why, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it now. And then I can get on board, like you say, because I know that there's a reason. It's just, I didn't initially understand it. And so that gut feeling, it just, the knee jerk, it just, you don't want to change things unless it has to be changed. And now that you've told us why, I can see the reasoning, and I can understand it, and I can go with it. So I'm like Jim, I think that we need to, now that we've gotten the information, we need to make that
Yeah,
move.
I think there's a first phase that's not gonna hamstring the second phase later. And that's one of the things we're trying to think through what the next phase is.
Right.
And it's always difficult. You'd like to be able to do it all at once. But we want to put together a path and a recommendation that doesn't box us in later, and we don't have to back up with something that you've already built and replaced.
Or tear down something that you built recently. So that's one of the most important things, is that what we've recommended here is that this is an economical way to accomplish as much as you can now and and impact as many students as you can, and still position yourself for the next step when you guys are ready for that.
And we're still utilizing the $14 million that we just spent 2 years ago at Hutchins.
Correct.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I know will be a topic of conversation with taxpayers in public. It has been already. Say, I heard y'all are tearing all these buildings down. Y'all just built like y'all just did that. And also the detention pond came up with that.
Yeah.
Now, build the big one, you've done this already, now build the building.
Right.
I mean, it's that kind of thing that you hear out in public.
No, exactly. I think that's good. And you can point to that going, that decision was good. We're able to use that. Ed, you were gonna say something?
I'm ready to go home, so I don't want to be really long on this.
Yeah.
I'm wearing 3 hats. I'm a taxpayer, I'm a board member, and I'm a member of this committee. And as a taxpayer, I want to get the best bang for my buck. As a board member, I don't want to hamstring a board 10 or 12 years down the road by thinking, well, you idiots, why didn't y'all do this? This plan, I think, gives a lot of options to future boards when it's time to replace those buildings. I was very adamant initially about reducing the campuses and eliminating one, and I see now that that's not doable. And I'm, like James said, I'll eat that just to move forward. I mean, I went to Hutchins as a kid. I remember my mom running over my brother there, and Jack Petty throwing him back in the car. I mean, you can be as sentimental as you want, but at the end of the day, you got to do the best thing with the dollars. And if that means changing the grade levels at Hutchins, then I'm okay with it.
But it does give us that ability to consolidate in the future if we decide we want to reduce campuses. But if y'all want to keep it also gives us the ability to have that littles over there option 10 years from now.
That option is open for us to, when we want to replace Northside, we have flexibility to look at it.
See which brother.
I think we have 2 questions.
Sorry about that.
If ultimately.
Hold on, everybody.
If the ultimate goal is 2 campuses, period, the end. Like this, to me, it's 2 different things. If we're gonna do it 3 buildings, then leave it as it is. But if you're gonna be, if ultimately it's 2 buildings, 2 elementary schools, I would like the committee to consider the reconfiguration of the grades, because there's a lot of logistics that I don't know if everybody understands, that the smaller the children are, the more people that you need, they require more supervision, they move slower, so you don't want them to do your biggest space, like you want them to be in a smaller area, so that's just something that I wanna put on the table, like, maybe consider putting, I mean, you're gonna have a campus that's gonna be 850 to 900 kids. It probably should be 2 to 5.
I think that
Get your
question,
babies together.
I think that question should be put in the lap of the board.
Yeah.
And that's fine too.
That's
That,
not-
that will
yeah.
go into you
I think
doing
all
your
that
construction,
this
your
committee,
bathrooms, though.
all this committee needs to decide is, are we okay with taking that to the board for their final review and say, where do you want these kids? And those, and I think, you know, the board can see it however they want to debate it and let them hash it out. But the committee's gotten to a point where everybody's positive about the whole process. We don't all agree on it, but we know we want to spend the money in the best way.
We know priority one is the high school, and replacing that older construction at Hutchins is the next priority. That's, okay.
Oh, and go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, maybe I missed it, what's the plan for that extra 6 to 8 million?
Yeah, that was the work at Northside. We were
That
going
was
to
the second
create a
grade?
secondary wing and then a entry expansion of that entry in front.
We still have one more meeting where we're gonna go over all these, because I think Alicia just hit on a point
Yeah.
that is critical, that I was trying to point out here. And remember, I told you, I wasn't trying to just guide you anyway, I was trying to tell you, in my mind, I'm come down to a mathematics guy. Every grade level is 240 to 250 or 60 kids, depending upon which grade level it is. If you're trying to stay at 900, and that's kind of where the committee was, I'm just trying to inform everybody. You can't go to 4 grades in any school except the high school. See, you can't. Now, if you change that, and you say we're going to have a school bigger than 900, then it's plausible to do that. But if 900 is that, and we're looking at future growth, I don't know if you want to be at 890 with future growth down the road of, 10%, which is another 80 to 90 kids at a particular campus, because now we're going to be way over. So the second point that Alicia brought out was consolidation. With a 6, 7, 8, and a 9, 10, 11, and 12. One of the ways that you can reconfigure, if we had enough space at the middle school, would be to add a grade level to middle school, and you can have a 5, 6, 7, 8. Then your older kids are in 2 grade levels.
Well, I think the biggest key also, like if you go to some of these communities that have a pre-K through 5 campus, they have separate entrances for pre-K. They have a separate playground that's just for this age group. So if the board chooses to do the big campus with pre-K through 5, or pre-K through 2, then construction and how it's designed would be crucial, and also how it's supervised and the leadership on that campus. But
Yeah, we've done that before. You have a kitchen, you had either separate dining areas, or you have a dividable dining area. So the kids, same thing, you put your core areas in the middle, the gymnasiums and so forth as well. So yes, absolutely seeing that. I think that's what Nico is referring to.
Okay, just listening to everybody's points, I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole of that's something that people can discuss 10 years from now.
Yeah, right.
So what's our task right now, and let's move forward.
Yeah. So I think that the task right now. Right, yeah. We're gonna get it.
Nico's changing computers to allow y'all to get on your phones.
Yes.
You're gonna vote.
It's minty. But I don't remember how to spell it. Is it
Do we want to recap the high school or something? Everybody, let's go. Nothing changed in the high school.
Can I ask real quick, what's the square footage that you'd be adding to Hutchins?
It's about
43,000.
43.
Okay, so this is what the plan, as discussed tonight, would look like as an all-in. So the bond budget of 81 million, the 52 million-ish, 51.6 at the high school, 21.6 at Hutchins, converting to a 3-4-5. Northside becomes a K-2. Myatt is a early childhood pre-K with no scope for a grand total of $3,044 less than 81.
And remember, in that K could stay right where it is right now too, you would be able to save that 7.7.
So,
Skillsmint.com.
for recording purposes, do you agree with the plan as presented? What we just talked about, what was just on the budget breakdown? High school, as previously discussed. Hutchins becoming a 3-4-5. Northside becoming a K-1-2. And Myatt being the early childhood K. And then the next step would be either replacing both Myatt and Northside as a early childhood to 2, or just the new being what you got in 2 different buildings. So I included the QR code on this one.
Not really a question, but more of a comment for the future. We were, the last couple of meetings, we had this consolidation talk, and it's kind of like we went down the area, like, that's not gonna happen now. So, because we kept talking about like future maintenance, savings, things of that nature, about
Yes.
losing a campus, which we're not doing now.
Correct.
So I think it would be nice to have the information of just on an annual kind of operating budget of now we still have the other one and we're adding on to other spaces. Is it going to increase the
Right.
annual operating budget now versus what we had before? So,
He could probably tell you that, right?
Yeah, so typically, I'll just say this, that if we're talking about having a separate early childhood and pre-K in the future, or we'll have it now, those typically, a lot of the cost is it takes a lot of people for that, just like y'all were mentioning with the littles. So I don't know that your cost per student on that, I don't know that it makes a difference. The biggest cost is that you have to have people for those kiddos. So I think even being able to get out of the older construction at Hutchins and get your campuses to about 750, I think operationally that is the sweet spot, and that's where you're going to see the most savings anyway, is getting those grade levels right sized. And when we come back in January, we'll bring some numbers.
And I will say this, just from a purely efficiency standpoint, replacing Hutchins with new construction is gonna save you some operational dollars just in efficiency. New building envelope, better rooftop units, proper insulation, all those things is gonna be a huge savings.
and I guess that's
Dollars
what I'm
to
getting at, is
square foot.
hopefully the new savings offsets continuing, and it should offset, continue to operate the.
Correct. I would say,
third element.
this is a bit of an assumption, but it will be a net zero or a reduction in utility
And that's
costs
it.
by just replacing Hutchins, and nothing else changes. And then obviously at the high school, getting rid of a lot of old inefficient buildings is gonna go a long way from.
And I'm still thinking the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's part of what we're gonna do next time. We're gonna talk about, let's look at what we're wanna, kind of the next steps are, what do we wanna take to the board as a recommendation? So the board has a meeting on the 22nd, so we would like to meet before that and work out a recommendation that can go to the board. And then the board has some deliberation, that gives them almost a month to deliberate. And so that's basically, someone's asking, what's the next step? We wanna come back the next time and talk about what we wanna recommend and what are the strengths of this package. How do we wanna go forward communicating that? And then who's gonna go to the board, or how does the group go to the board to make that recommendation? And then how do you become that committee that goes out and gets this information? Because you guys have done incredible work. And I know it's hard, it's really hard not to, I wanna be able to go and say, let's just take Northside and let's do the whole thing there that we wanna do. But we know we gotta do it in a couple of steps right now.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody remembers the first meeting or the second meeting, I think, we gave 5 different big picture scenarios. And some of them were the whole enchilada. And it you were left with a $47 million deficit. And so yeah, we thought about that. We priced it out. We could do everything that you want on your wish list. You just can't afford it right now. So we started dialing it back, and then we started to dedicate more money at the high school, and that kind of dialed some more things back. And I know it's difficult, when we came in and we started asking those first questions, and I think you were the one who said, well, I can't vote on this now because I don't know the whole picture. And so now I feel like we've got the whole picture, and that's, I feel like this is really the best.
Yeah, and this will be something we can take to the board, and they'll have deliberations for it. So I think the next thing we need to do, Bob, I don't want to cut this off too soon. We do need to talk about what dates are available for you all. We were looking at that. I don't want to jump the gun. Is that okay?
You go right ahead.
So we need to have a meeting before the board meeting. The board meets on the 22nd. So we were looking at that week before, the week of the 13th through the 17th. The only day that's, I think, bad for Nico and I is the 14th. So 13th, 15th, or in court, 13th, 15th, 16th, somewhere in there are those. So check your calendar if you would. So January 13th, yes, I'm sorry. 13th is a Monday. How many like Monday nights? We like Mondays. Mondays are better, no basketball, all that kind of stuff, right? So Monday the 13th, same time.
5 o'clock?
Yes. Same time, same place.
You like this meat locker?
At least they have the golden size chairs.
I'm freezing. Can't wait to get outside.
It's cold right every day.
Around seat, so.
All right, next one, we'll have 13th at 5.
So that's a Monday, January 13th, so. Bob, is there anything, I don't want to steal closing comments or?
Not that I can think of, just for a general overall, the board will meet a week from Wednesday, so I think that's the 16th. The next meeting will be on January 22nd. If a bond is going to be called, it must be called by February 14th, which is a Friday. So if the board is not ready to make that decision on the 22nd, which I do not think they will be at that moment in time, we would have to have a special called meeting, which I think is the direction we'll be heading sometime between January 22nd and February 14th. But February 14th is the absolute deadline to call for bond election on the May 3rd bond agenda or election agenda.
So no formal homework, but start thinking for the next meeting about campaign strategies, what would be best and well received, if it's going to be social media heavy, mailers, what level of meetings do we want to have with different community organizations, those kinds of things. So just start thinking about that as we prep for the next one.
When do we need to decide on someone to go before the board?
I think that's what we wanted to talk about next time. It's, I'll just say, a lot of times we'll see, we'd like as many of the committee that could, we could talk about that group next time, but somebody typically to talk, I would like to see maybe 3 people at the most that actually talk, but somebody to talk about the process, somebody to talk about the high school, and then somebody to talk about the elementary part of it. I think that might be good. So, but typically we see that a lot, and we can help with in Palacios, it was like a 5-6 slide presentation that was given to the board. It just went through what the message, the things that make it the most important to you for why we need to do it is the same message that's got to be carried out, as Nico was saying, for your homework. So, hey, this right sizes things, this fixes the things we need to do at the high school, et cetera, and put that all into kind of a list for the board to have in front of them and consider when they go and do a workshop. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.